Welcome. Today, we're taking a comprehensive look at the sources and data behind one of the world's most impactful corporations.
We are. We're doing an in-depth examination of an American athletic giant, Nike, Inc. And this is, it's more than just a review of a successful company.
Much more.
It's really a study of how one single brand came to master global commerce, how it drove this relentless innovation, and at the same time navigated decades of pretty persistent corporate controversy.
Our mission here is to trace the entire story, the full trajectory of this enterprise, starting, literally from the back of a car.
Right.
And then map its growth into the world's largest supplier of athletic shoes and apparel.
We want to analyze the intricate dynamics that really define its influence today.
And to really understand that story, you first have to grasp the sheer scale of the operation. So Nike Inc. was established on January 25, 1964.
But not as Nike.
No, not at first. It was operating under the name Blue Ribbon Stores, or BRS. The company didn't formally become Nike Inc. until May 30th, 1971.
And the name itself. It comes from Nike, the Greek goddess of victory. A fitting chase, it turns out.
It certainly was, and while it operates globally, its heart, you could say, is still in the Pacific Northwest. The world headquarters are located near Beaverton, Oregon.
And when we talk about scale, the financial numbers are just staggering. The sources show revenue past $46 billion in fiscal year 2022.
And the most recent figures for 2024 push that even higher.
They do. We're looking at $51.36 billion.
Those numbers signify just immense corporate power and global reach. Think about the employment stats alone.
Yeah, as of 2024, Nike directly employs 79,400 people worldwide.
And the market valuation, though it's always in flux, was valued at over $114.5 billion back in October 2018.
A valuation that places it firmly among the world's elite corporate players. For some context, Nike was ranked 239th in the Forbes Global 2000 companies in 2024.
So that puts it just inside the top quarter of the most powerful publicly traded companies on the planet.
And its identity is maybe more than any other sportswear brand, just instantly recognizable everywhere.
Absolutely. The logo and the slogan.
Exactly. It's anchored by two trademarks. The simple, ubiquitous Swoosh logo and that enduring three-word slogan, "Just do it." The memorability of those assets is just a huge factor in their success.
It really is. So let's begin right at the start. Let's look at the partnership that built the foundation for this colossal corporation.
The origin story is intensely personal. It's rooted in competitive track and field at the University of Oregon.
Right. It centers on the relationship between an athlete, Phil Knight, and his coach, Bill Bowerman.
A very complementary relationship. Bowerman was, by all accounts, driven by an almost obsessive desire to improve athletic performance. He was always tinkering with shoe designs himself.
And Knight brought the other half of the equation.
He did. He had the financial acumen and that entrepreneurial drive, that synergy, that combination of performance innovation and business sense. That was the engine for Blue Ribbon Sports.
The initial phase, though, was incredibly modest.
Oh, very much a startup mentality.
Yeah.
BRS launched in 1964 in Eugene, Oregon, not as a manufacturer, but as a distributor for a Japanese shoemaker, Onitsuka Tiger.
And the distribution model was, let's say, unconventional. Knight did most of the sales himself.
He did. He was literally selling the shoes directly out of the trunk of his car at local track meets.
Which gave him direct feedback from athletes and kept the overhead incredibly low in those early days.
And that first year showed some promise. They sold 1,300 pairs of those imported running shoes, which grossed them about $8,000.
But the growth was immediate.
It was swift. By the next year, 1965, sales had climbed up to $20,000.
And by 1966, the operation was stable enough for a physical retail store?
Their first one, they opened it at 3107 Pico Boulevard in Santa Monica, California. That was the first real step from being a car trunk business to a formal retail company.
But what really shifted BRS from just being a distributor into a true innovation company was Bowerman's mindset.
His experimental mindset, absolutely. Which leads directly to one of the most famous origin stories in corporate history, the waffle innovation.
Okay, let's really unpack this moment. It came directly from a coaching problem he was trying to solve.
It did. The context was a big change at Oregon's Hayward Field, a legendary track venue. It was transitioning to an artificial surface.
So Bowerman was fixated on developing a shoe that could grip on grass or bark dust, for training, but that didn't have the spikes that would damage the new synthetic track.
He was looking for a flexible, lightweight, spikeless traction system. And the spark of inspiration, as the story goes, Happened in 1971,
Over breakfast.
over breakfast with his wife. He's looking at her household waffle iron and has this realization that the grid pattern could be molded in rubber to create these small, evenly spaced nubs for traction.
It's an amazing story. He basically sacrificed his wife's waffle iron to experiment with pouring liquid rubber into it.
And the results of that unusual experiment were truly revolutionary for athletic footwear.
It led directly to the first product with this new sole, the 1972 Moon Shoe.
It got that nickname because the grid pattern, when it was pressed into dust, looked like the footprints left by the astronauts on the moon.
And that concept was then refined into the 1974 Waffle Trainer.
A shoe that is really credited with fueling the explosive growth of Blue Ribbon Sports.
And the success of this innovation, their own proprietary technology, led directly to the need for a rebrand.
Right. As BRS was developing its own superior products, tensions were growing with their supplier, Onitsuka Tiger.
And it came to a head in 1971.
It did. The Japanese company basically gave them an ultimatum that would have given them a 51% majority ownership stake in BRS.
Knight and Bowerman refused.
They did. They severed ties and committed fully to launching their own independent footwear line.
Which meant they needed a new corporate identity, a name and a logo.
The name Nike is credited to Jeff Johnson, who was the company's first full-time employee. At the same time, the iconic Swoosh logo was designed by a graphic design student named Carolyn Davidson.
For a reported fee of just $35.
That's the story. The sources confirm the Swoosh was first used on June 18, 1971. That was the real birth of the brand's aesthetic. It was then registered with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office a few years later, in January 1974.
And this shift from distributing another company's products to dominating with their own was incredibly effective.
The growth was meteoric. By 1980, just 6 years after the Waffle Trainer launched, Nike had captured a 50% market share in the U.S. athletic shoe market.
Which positioned them perfectly for their initial public offering that same year.
But as you said, the branding machine needed more than just a logo. In 1988, their ad agency, Whedon plus Kennedy, came up with what is, arguably the most recognizable slogan in modern history.
Just do it.
Just do it.
And the source of inspiration for that phrase is fascinating and kind of morbid.
It is. Dan Whedon, the co-founder of the agency, credits the slogan to the final words spoken by Gary Gilmore before his execution in 1977.
His last words were, "Let's do it."
Exactly. Whedon recognized the power in that and refined it into this ultimate call to action. The slogan debuted in an ad on July 1st, 1988, featuring Walt Stack, an 80-year-old marathon runner.
The impact was transformative. It went beyond sports and became this cultural maxim.
It wasn't just good marketing. It fundamentally changed how athletic brands communicated with people. Advertising Age later chose it as one of the top 5 ad slogans of the entire 20th century.
A truly enduring piece of strategic brilliance. So moving on from that founding history, we have to look at how the company managed its massive expansion.
Right. They quickly realized that to keep growing, they needed strategic financial management, specifically through disciplined portfolio diversification and then refocusing.
This is where we see a complex timeline of both acquisitions and divestitures.
Yeah, you can really see Nike acting like a skilled portfolio manager. They'd acquire companies to complement their market position or to get into new markets entirely.
And then they would systematically sell off the assets that weren't part of their core business to streamline everything.
Let's run through that purchasing timeline. They acquired Cole Haan in 1988.
An upscale footwear company, so it gave them an entry into a more formal luxury market.
Right. Then in 1994, they bought Bauer Hockey, diversifying into winter sports. In 2002, they added the surf apparel company Hurley International.
And then came the big one, Converse, in 2003. They bought it for $309 million.
A really strategic move to capture a heritage brand with huge lifestyle appeal, which perfectly complemented Nike's performance focus.
And they wrapped up that buying period with the British sports brand Umbro in 2007.
But the strategy wasn't just about buying. It was also about defining their core mission. The refocusing started almost right away.
They sold Starter in 2007.
Then Bauer Hockey in 2008. And then they started shedding those non-core lifestyle brands, selling Umbro in 2012 and Cole Haan in 2013.
The result of all that pruning is clear. Converse Inc. is their primary subsidiary now. It shows a really singular focus on core footwear and sportswear.
But in the last decade, the focus of their acquisitions shifted dramatically.
Away from traditional apparel and footwear brands.
Exactly. They pivoted toward building their own digital capability and acquiring data analytics companies, a critical move, recognizing that future growth relies on understanding customer behavior.
This technological push really began around 2018 with the acquisition of Zodiac, a consumer data analytics company.
The goal there was obviously to harvest and process huge amounts of customer data to predict trends and personalize marketing.
That was quickly followed in 2019 by the purchase of Select, which is a firm that specializes in predictive analytics.
Right, so if Zodiac was about collecting data, Select was about anticipating demand, figuring out which products need to be stocked where, minimizing waste.
The acceleration continued into the 2020s. In February 2021, they acquired Datalog,
A company focused on enhancing their digital sales and integrating machine learning into their e-commerce platform.
and then, perhaps the most futuristic move, in December 2021, Nike bought RTFKT Studios.
A virtual shoe company that makes NFTs. This signaled a clear commitment to the virtual product space, allowing them to sell digital assets, opening up entirely new revenue streams.
And looking at the overall financial health of the corporation gives you, the listener, some essential context for why these decisions matter.
We mentioned the 2024 revenue was US $51.36 billion, with a net income of US $5.7 billion.
It's important to look at where that revenue comes from. Using 2023 data, the breakdown shows that footwear is still the undisputed core of the business.
Absolutely. It accounts for 64.7% of total sales. Apparel contributes a respectable 27.0%.
What's interesting is the contribution of Converse, which only generates 4.7% of sales.
It suggests that while Converse is profitable and culturally relevant, the massive proprietary Nike brand carries the overwhelming financial weight.
And the sales breakdown by geography is also revealing. North America is still the dominant market.
It contributes 42.2% of sales in 2023. Europe, the Middle East, and Africa make up 26.2%, and Greater China, even with recent volatility, still accounts for a significant 14.2%.
And those regional percentages are directly impacted by external economic pressures, which can shift very quickly. The COVID-19 pandemic is a perfect example.
It heavily impacted their Chinese operations right at the start of 2020.
Right.
In February of that year, something like 75% of Nike stores in Greater China had to close temporarily.
Which resulted in a 5% drop in Chinese sales overall. But at the same time, the crisis drove this massive digital shift.
This is where that preemptive digital strategy really paid off. Despite physical store closures, Nike's global online sales grew by 36% in that first quarter.
And their personal training app sales grew by a staggering 80% in China alone.
It shows an immediate successful pivot to maintaining engagement digitally, even when physical retail just stopped.
Another persistent pressure is geopolitical trade tensions. The source material notes a warning from Nike in June of 2025 that new tariffs could potentially add about $1 billion to its annual costs.
That is an astronomical figure. It demands a clear response.
And that threat directly prompted the company to announce they would accelerate the shift of some production out of China and into countries like Vietnam and Indonesia.
To reduce exposure to those specific trade risks and maintain their cost efficiency, the scale-up over the last 2 decades is just undeniable. In 2005, revenue was $13.7 billion. By 2023, it was $51.2 billion.
An incredible transformation.
Yeah.
So, given those massive financials, it's clear their success is about much more than volume. Let's pivot now to how they translate that scale into cultural dominance through product innovation.
Indeed. The company quickly moved beyond just track running shoes. They expanded their lines to cover a huge array of activities.
Soccer, basketball, wrestling, cheerleading.
Even cricket and auto racing. Early signature lines like the Air Max in '87 and the Air Warrock in '92 became not just performance benchmarks, but lifestyle icons.
And they invested heavily in material science to achieve those marginal gains. For instance, their Air Zoom Yorker cricket shoe was engineered to be 30% lighter than competitors.
And you see the application of materials like flywire and lunar light foam, all focused on reducing weight while maintaining structural support for athletes.
This push really reached its peak with the introduction of the Nike Vaporfly in 2017.
This shoe caused such a technological disruption that it, arguably redefined the relationship between equipment and the athlete.
And here's where the data is so critical. Independent studies after the Vaporfly's release showed it could reliably improve marathon race time by up to 4.2%.
In a sport measured by seconds, that is a revolutionary margin.
And that performance boost is entirely down to the composition of the midsole.
Right. It uses a modified material called Pebax foam, which Nike branded as ZoomX. Pebax itself is used in things like airplane insulation.
And Nike's formula was described as squishier, bouncier, and lighter than traditional foams.
And the critical component embedded within that foam is a full-length carbon fiber plate.
It's designed to act like a lever, generating extra spring in every step.
This combination immediately triggered a huge controversy. Critics were suggesting it was a form of technology doping,
The argument being that the performance gain was coming from the equipment, not the athlete.
which forced the hand of the sport's governing body, World Athletics. They responded in January 2020 by issuing a whole new set of guidelines.
And those guidelines are incredibly precise. They capped sole thickness at a maximum of 40 millimeters. And they said shoes could only contain one single, rigid, embedded plate.
No stacking of plates was allowed.
And there was another important regulation about fairness for non-sponsored athletes.
Right. World Athletics mandated that any shoe used in elite competition must have been available for purchase on the open market for at least 4 months.
This prevents a company from using secret prototypes to get an unfair advantage for their sponsored athletes.
The key insight here isn't just that Nike made a faster shoe. It's that they forced an international sports federation to rewrite the foundational rules of competition.
They literally changed the definition of fair play in distance running.
Beyond high-performance gear, Nike embraced digital integration early on with the Nike Plus product.
This was designed to monitor a runner's performance via a small radio device in the shoe that linked to an iPod Nano.
A major innovation for its time, but it immediately drew criticism about privacy and security.
Right. Researchers successfully demonstrated they could track users' RFID devices from up to 60 feet away.
It highlighted a crucial early concern about the security implications of integrating tracking technologies into consumer products.
On the lifestyle side, the brand's cultural dominance in urban and youth fashion is just undeniable. Nike products became status symbols.
Specific shoe lines became instant street staples. Air Jordans, Air Force Ones, the Air Max running shoes.
And Nike learned to weaponize scarcity. Limited edition releases, known as quick strikes, became intensely desirable collectibles, which fueled the whole sneakerhead subculture.
We also saw products designed for performance cross over completely into everyday wear, like the Nike Tempo shorts.
Spandex compression shorts became casual attire in the 90s and 2000s. They even added a zip pocket for a Walkman or an MP3 player.
A similar thing happened with the Nike Elite basketball socks. They were engineered with cushioning and moisture-wicking properties, but they became a huge youth fashion trend.
They went from being functional white or black socks to featuring bright colors and abstract designs.
And the ultimate expression of this status is in the collectibles market. Think about the original 1972 Moon shoes from Bowerman's Waffle Iron.
A single, unworn pair sold for $437,500 at a Sotheby's auction in 2019.
That set a record at the time for the highest price ever paid for a pair of sneakers.
And this trend continues in the virtual realm. After acquiring RTFKT Studios, Nike launched the Dunk Genesis Crypto Kicks NFT collection.
One digital design made with the artist Takashi Murakami sold for $134,000 in April 2022. It's a seamless transition of that scarcity model from the physical to the virtual world.
For a company operating at this scale, though, the success and innovation we've talked about are constantly mirrored by intense scrutiny over corporate responsibility and ethical issues.
That is the essential complexity of the company. Their sourcing is vast, relying on contract manufacturing. They work with over 700 factories worldwide.
And most of that manufacturing is in Asia: Indonesia, China, Vietnam, Pakistan.
And this reliance on contract manufacturing is what led to the high-profile criticisms that started in the 1990s, often called the sweatshop era.
These issues led to widespread protests in major U.S. cities over allegations of child labor and poor working conditions.
Activist groups started documenting specific violations. Vietnam Labor Watch, for instance, reported ongoing minimum wage and overtime violations in Nike's contracted factories in Vietnam as late as 1996.
And a 2001 BBC documentary really brought it to light, focusing on a Cambodian factory. It uncovered evidence of child labor, with young girls working 7 days a week, often for 16 hours a day.
And the challenges are persistent. More recently, in April 2014, one of mainland China's largest labor strikes occurred at the Yuyun factory, a major manufacturer for Nike.
An estimated 70,000 employees participated in that strike.
The protest was centered on the fact that employees had been underpaid for nearly 20 years, an estimated 250 yuan per employee per month. The scale of that strike highlights the systemic difficulties in monitoring labor compliance.
And if we shift from labor practices to financial ethics, Nike came under intense scrutiny after the 2017 Paradise Papers leak.
This was a massive leak of documents detailing sophisticated offshore tax minimization strategies.
And the specific strategy revealed involved the complex shifting of intellectual property.
Yeah.
Nike transferred ownership of the Swoosh trademark, its most valuable asset, to a subsidiary in Bermuda,
This move allowed the Bermudan subsidiary to legally charge massive royalties back to its European headquarters in the Netherlands.
which effectively shifted huge amounts of taxable corporate profit out of Europe and into tax-free Bermuda.
And when that original Dutch tax break expired in 2014, Nike simply reorganized the IP again, shifting it to a new Dutch limited partnership.
A pass-through mechanism.
Exactly. Since the principals of that partnership resided outside the Netherlands, they owed no tax there on that income, allowing the company to maintain the tax advantage. It shows just how much focus they put on financial engineering.
Moving into the political and social sphere, Nike's ad campaigns have repeatedly generated significant turbulence.
The most notable example is the campaign launched in September 2018 when they signed former quarterback Colin Kaepernick to a long-term campaign.
This was focused on his decision to kneel during the national anthem to protest racial injustice.
And the public reaction was instant and sharply polarized. On one side, you had customers publicly burning their Nike products.
And the company's stock price initially fell by 2.2%.
However, the long-term data shows the strategy was financially beneficial. Online orders rose by 27% in the following 4 days.
And the company reported a sustained rise in sales over the next 3 months. It was a calculated risk that paid off.
Another controversy came up in July 2019 when Nike pulled a shoe design featuring the Betsy Ross flag after Kaepernick raised concerns about its association with the era of slavery.
And that decision triggered immediate political criticism from high-profile Republican figures.
Internationally, the company has faced intense scrutiny over its stances, especially concerning China. In 2019, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence accused Nike of siding with the Chinese Communist Party.
That was after the company reportedly removed Houston Rockets merchandise from Chinese stores following a tweet supporting the Hong Kong protests.
And perhaps most serious are the ongoing allegations concerning the use of forced labor in the Xinjiang region of China.
Nike has been subject to criminal complaints in Europe and an investigation in Canada, alleging the company may have benefited from forced Uyghur labor in its supply chains there.
Lastly, their environmental record is a complex mix of historical failings and ambitious commitments.
A surprising historical issue was the use of sulfur hexafluoride, or SF6, in all Air-branded shoes from 1992 to 2006.
SF6 is an extremely potent greenhouse gas. The sources indicate Nike's peak use reached 277 tons in 1997. It highlights a period where product innovation came at a significant environmental cost.
But it's also important to note their recycling efforts. The Nike Grind program has been running since 1993.
It recycles old athletic shoes to create sport surfaces like basketball courts and running tracks. A massive, sustained commitment to recycling.
On the manufacturing side, there were serious chemical concerns. A 2008 study found workers in Thai factories were exposed to toxic isocyanates.
And following reports from Greenpeace in 2011 linking Nike suppliers to pollution in the Yangtze River, Nike made a firm commitment to eliminate the discharge of hazardous chemicals by 2020.
They've also initiated steps like using water-free dyeing materials in some Southeast Asian factories.
Their current public commitment is branded as the Move to Zero program, aiming for zero waste and zero carbon. And they're exploring new materials like air carbon bioplastic as a replacement for leather and plastic.
The scale of Nike's cultural impact, though, really can't be separated from its marketing machine. The sources highlight that the company spent an astonishing $11.5 billion on marketing and endorsement contracts in 2018 alone.
A third of its total sales that year. That kind of investment secures the biggest names in sport and ensures Nike products are associated with peak athletic achievement on every global stage.
Their first professional athlete endorser was tennis player Ilie Nastase, but the first track endorser was Steve Prefontaine, Bill Bowerman's pupil.
And Prefontaine remains a really important figure in the corporate mythology. He is the only statue of a sponsored athlete at Nike World Headquarters.
But the most transformative endorsement, the one that rewrote the rule book, was signing Michael Jordan in 1984.
It immediately created the Air Jordan brand, which proved to be an unparalleled boost to sales and market share. It basically became its own corporate division.
And that model was repeated with subsequent basketball royalty: Kobe Bryant, LeBron James.
You're all witnesses.
Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo. The strategy is to align the brand with generational icons.
And a more recent significant development is the commitment to WNBA stars, reflecting that league's rising popularity.
They've produced signature shoes for figures like Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie, and more recently, Sabrina Ionescu.
And of course, Caitlin Clark signed a highly publicized 8-year, $28 million deal that guarantees her a signature shoe. It confirms Nike views the future of basketball as both NBA and WNBA.
Their history with golf is also a critical case study in refocusing. They sponsored Tiger Woods until 2024 and signed Rory McIlroy to a massive $250 million deal.
But despite those huge names, the equipment side of the business struggled against specialized competitors.
So in 2016, Nike made the strategic decision to exit the golf equipment business entirely. No more club manufacturing.
Instead, they focused their sponsored athletes exclusively on high-margin apparel and footwear.
And beyond individual athletes, institutional partnerships are crucial. Nike became the official uniform supplier for the NBA starting in the 2017-18 season.
That was the first time the Swoosh logo appeared on NBA jerseys during a game. And that partnership has already been extended through 2037.
In global soccer, their presence is immense, sponsoring top clubs like FC Barcelona and Liverpool, and national teams like Brazil and France.
And they've been the official ball supplier for the Premier League since the 2001 season.
Even managing these high-profile endorsements reflects the corporate responsibility challenges. In 1990, Nike named its childcare facility after coach Joe Paterno.
Following a Penn State sex abuse scandal report in 2012, they immediately removed his name.
Similarly, they suspended their contract with Oscar Pistorius in 2013 after he was charged with premeditated murder. It shows a necessity to react swiftly to protect the brand.
We also have to recognize the uniquely close ties between Nike and the University of Oregon. Phil Knight, as an alumnus, has invested substantial personal funds into the university's athletic infrastructure.
And Nike designers like Tinker Hatfield are heavily involved in designing the football team's unique uniforms.
The corporation even donated $13.5 million toward the renovation of Hayward Field, the university's legendary track venue.
Finally, third-party research consistently confirms Nike's relevance. A 2023 Rakuten study identified Nike as the most popular sportswear brand in the U.S., ahead of Lululemon and Adidas.
And a 2023 Kantar study ranked Nike as one of the most inclusive brands in America, alongside Amazon and Disney,
which suggests a successful translation of its social positioning into consumer perception. A 2016 study also ranked it as the third most relevant brand for Gen Z consumers in the crucial Chinese market.
So as we synthesize all this, we see Nike, Inc., as this unique, powerful, and often contradictory case study. It has a clear dual identity.
One side is defined by market dominance built on groundbreaking innovation, from the waffle sole up to the rule-changing Vaporfly.
But that success is contrasted sharply with continuous high-profile turbulence. We've seen decades of criticism over labor practices, sophisticated tax avoidance strategies, and the complex navigation of volatile political issues.
The corporation manages this complexity by championing peak human performance and aligning its brand with major social causes.
Yet it has to simultaneously grapple with these continuous ethical, geopolitical, and financial challenges across its immense, complicated global supply chain.
This complexity, operating at a scale that manufactures hundreds of millions of units a year across dozens of countries, means that every move is subject to intense scrutiny.
So you should consider the inherent conflict in a corporation that champions human performance and social causes while navigating these continuous, complex ethical and political challenges. This complexity really demands ongoing scrutiny from informed consumers who understand the full cost and mechanism of this extraordinary global success.
Thanks for listening.